Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Bernard Green, and I'd like to start the program. Let's start with Flag Corps Attend, and after which we'll hear a song sung by Tracy Clark, America the Beautiful. And this is the Firefighters Union Honor Guard, plus Girl Scout troop member Haley Chase from troop number 79255 here in Brookline. Thank you for attending. Her father is a firefighter here in Brookline, and her family is composed of many, many firefighters in Boston, and I believe maybe elsewhere. So, Tracy?
Honor guard, attention! Honor guard, present arms!
Go ahead.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains, majesties above the fruited plains. America, America, God shed His grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for patriot streams that see beyond the year. Thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed His grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
Thank you, Tracy, for starting off our program with such a beautiful rendition of America. It's so appropriate on this day of remembrance and mourning. I'm Bernard Green, chair of the Brookline Select Board, and one of the organizers of this annual September 11th event here in Brookline to remember that event and to learn some lessons from it. Thank you for joining us here at Fire Station number 5 or on the YouTube channel of BIG if you're listening to it later. This morning's program will start with some remarks by me that will include reading the names of those Brookline or those individuals with Brookline connections who died in the September 11, 2001 attacks. Following that, we will hear from Tommy Vitolo, our state representative, And also we have Greg Schwartz, a newly elected state representative representing Precinct 16 here in Brookline, as well as other parts of the area. If Greg would like to say a few words, Greg? At that time, he can do that. We also have Peter Moyer. Peter is the brother of firefighter Manuel Del Valle Jr., one of the brave firefighters who lost their lives in New York on September 11th, running into the building to save people while they were running out. Let's see. We'll also have statements by various people who will be included in the video recording of the program. At the end of our program, Deputy Fire Chief David Randolph will begin the fire department's solemn remembrance ceremony. It will include a moment of silence in remembrance of the firefighters who died on September 11th. Remember, it was at 9:46 that the first plane hit the World Trade Center, and then 9:03 that the second plane hit. We should try to remember with a moment of silence those times. The purpose of today's event is to set aside a few minutes to remind ourselves and reflect on the events of September 11th and the 2,996 people who lost their lives on that day, including the brave men and women, firefighters, police, and other emergency personnel, the rescue dogs who played an unsung but heroic role on that day, public safety dispatchers and others in the background who gave critical support to the first responders, and the civilian personnel who are starting their day at offices and businesses in the World Trade Center and at the Pentagon. The passengers on the airplanes that were weaponized for terror, and all the other people who died or were impacted by the terror attack on that beautiful September morning, much like today's beautiful September day, that turned into a hell that changed America and changed all of us. Let me now remember the names of the people with Brookline ties that died that day. Christine Barbuto. Christine was a Brookline resident and a buyer for TJX companies. Lisa Gordenstein. Lisa lived in Needham but graduated from Brookline High School in 1977. She was an assistant vice president and merchandise manager of the TJX companies and the granddaughter of Lillian Reinhardt of Brookline. Christine and Lisa were two of 6 employees of TJX, who died on American Flight 11. Kellyanne Booms. Kelly worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers, her first job after graduating from Miami University of Ohio. She was a resident of Brookline. John Brett Cahill. John was born in Brookline, but a resident of Wellesley. As I mentioned earlier, his sister has provided us, scratch that. Okay. Manuel Del Valle, a 1988 graduate of Brookline High School and a New York City firefighter assigned to Engine Company No. 5, one of the first fire companies to respond to the attack on the World Trade Center. He responded even though his tour of duty that day had ended. Peter Moyer will give us some more memories of his brother Manuel Del Valle when he speaks later on. Peter, as we all know, is a firefighter here in Brookline. Gerard P. Dewan. Gerard was a New York City firefighter who was one of the first firefighters to respond on Ladder 3. He died that day alongside 12 firefighters from his station trying to save people in the towers. Gerard was a West Roxbury native and third-generation firefighter. Gerard and Maureen Gilligan's brother, Jack Dewan, served for many years as a Brookline firefighter until he retired. Carlton Fife was a senior analyst at John Hancock He lived in Brookline with his wife Haven and his 1-year-old son Jackson at the time, who will now be 24 years old. Daniel C. Lewin, a Brookline resident. According to the Tab newspaper, he was reportedly stabbed on Flight 11 as it was hijacked, making him the first victim of the attacks. And this is evidence that the passengers on that flight also heroically resisted the terrorists who were beginning to destroy us. John? Thank you. Next on the program, our State Representative, Tommy Vitolo.
Honor guard, order, arms. At ease.
Good morning. As many of you know, I had been living in Ireland for over a year on that tragic day 23 years ago. I've shared how the Irish were shattered by 9/11 and mourned with us from the other side of the pond. Despite living in Dublin, I had been living a quiet life for the few months before the attack. Jennifer, the woman I would marry 3 years later, had left Ireland in June. My graduate school classmates had returned to Cork, Kerry, Limerick, and Donegal. The quiet didn't bother me. It left me time and space to work on my master's thesis, which used matrices of differential equations to describe how sediment moves down a river, a real page-turner. It was on September 12th, 2001, that I met Father Peter Healy, the parish priest at Our Ladies of Victory in Glasnevin, Dublin 9, just around the corner from my university. I visited him the following day, and the next, and the next. The terrorist attacks on my country changed my peaceful solitude to incredible despair and loneliness. I simply couldn't process my own emotions. The last time I saw Father Healy was about a week later, the day I headed to the airport. For 1 week, he was the only person I could talk with, the only person who could put his arm around me, the only person with whom I could grieve. Father Healy now resides at St. Aidan's Monastery in County Wexford, and I'll be forever grateful to him for giving me his ears and his kindness. What I want to leave you with is this: our lives collectively, or more often individually, can change at the drop of a hat. When you are feeling alone, overwhelmed, or struggling to find pleasure in the things you used to enjoy, talk with someone. This is so important if you're a firefighter or a teacher, police officer or a graduate student, or an older adult, or a fourth grader, or a select board member, or a new parent, or any other kind of person on this planet. It's true if you've had a difficult experience. It's true if you're going through a terrible time. Talk with a trusted friend or colleague, or someone you don't know, like a counselor or a priest. If you can't find anyone, call me. 617-872-8921 is my cell phone number. Talking about an emotional struggle doesn't betray weakness. On the contrary, it allows a person to find one's strength within. Be safe, everyone.
I'd like to have our newly elected state representative, Greg Schwartz, say a few words just to introduce himself so that we know who he is, and we can call him, not just when we need someone to talk to, but when we have issues that we'd like to get his support from. But welcome to your new position as our representative, Precinct 16, Greg. Please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bernard, and thank you, everyone. I have actually not been elected yet. I'm the presumptive elected because there's a general election, but there's no opponent in the general election. So thank you so much for inviting me, Bernard, and thank you for allowing me to speak briefly. It's precincts 5, 13A, 14, and 15 also. But when I think of 9/11, like many of you, and I'm sure many others, I think of where I was when I first heard about the planes and the crash into the building. My parents had always talked about where they were when they heard JFK was shot. I think all of us now know what that feeling is like because all of us who lived through the 9/11 know where we were. For me, I had just started within the last month or two my medical career at Mass General, and I was seeing patients that morning. I remember the patient I was with said to me, "There's something about a plane that might have crashed into a building," and we looked it up together. We listened to the radio. We didn't really realize the enormity of the situation, and so I remember that moment very vividly, and it was the beginning of my career as a healer. And what I'm also reminded of is just a couple of weeks later, I was visiting my parents in New York, and I was taking the subway train down to the site, which once I got there, I saw it was still smoldering. But what I took away from that trip was even more moving was when we went through the station in Times Square. As you know, Times Square, there are multiple train lines that go through there, and you can change from one train to another. We had to change from one train to another. We were walking through the cavernous tunnels, and there's a place where they all come together, and the walls were covered with home-written appeals by people that they had taped to the walls saying, "If you've seen," and there's a name, "please contact this number." There were people for weeks after who were still trying to pull their lives back together, trying to find their loved ones who were missing and they had not heard from. And so when you think about this, and when I think about this terrible tragedy, I think of the loss, but also the courage of the healers, the first responders who were ready to run into the fire as opposed to away from it. And as anybody involved in public service, I think we all should think about running towards trouble instead of away from it so that we can try to help everybody heal their lives. Thank you, everyone.
In the audience, we have our town administrator, Chaz Carey, and we'd like to say a few words. And you know, Greg's talk reminded me that we should all think about where we were on 9/11. or other significant events in American history. I remember I was about 13 when John F. Kennedy was killed, and I remember to this day what that was like. And it's so ironic that my daughter was 13 when the World Trade Center came down. And you know, we should think about what our thoughts were on those days, or days like that, and try to figure out what those thoughts were in a positive sense as well as negative sense. Because many times under periods of stress like that, our reaction may not be the most focused and appropriate reaction. But there are reactions, and we should think about why we had them and think about how we can learn positive things from experiences of tragedy like 9/11 and like other events that we've experienced in this country. So with that, Chaz?
Thank you, Bernard, and thank you everyone for being here. At the 9/11 Museum, there's a quote on the wall right when you go into it that says, "No day shall erase you from the memory of time," and it's attributed to Virgil. And I find that quote very moving and interesting in a couple of ways. First, because it's taken out of context. It's stripped of the context from which it comes in the Aeneid. And in the Aeneid, it means something totally different than what it is intended to mean at that memorial. Those words are intended to be words of comfort at the memorial. They are intended to be words of remembrance. But in reality, in the Aeneid, they are words of the glorification of violence. And it is very interesting to see how, with time and out of context, we can take things and place them and make them simply history as opposed to our shared experience. It's something that's given me a lot of pause and a lot of thought as we now reach a period of time when there are almost no living survivors from Pearl Harbor. The last of the World War II generation is dying. The judge that I clerked for is a Bronze Star recipient. He turned 100 this year. I don't know how much longer he will be with us or his peers will be with us. We are seeing the transition from memory to history. And it's becoming that way with 9/11 too, which is as it should be, but also something that I think we should be mindful of. The last service members to die in Afghanistan were born after 9/11. They have no memory of what it was that sent us there in the first place. It is a hard thing to see memory fade into history for all of us who were there. And for a long time, I was angry about that out of context Virgil quote because my uncle, Frank Brennan, was killed on 9/11. He was on the 103rd floor, one of the towers. He worked for Cantor Fitzgerald. And in general, I found my feelings on that day tended towards anger. Whenever the newspaper would say, oh, the 9/11 family's this, the 9/11 family's that, I would say, who called my mom? Who called my grandmother? Why didn't you ask them? I would say, you know, this idea that there's a monolithic block of people experiencing grief, when in reality, often the only thing that bound us was that grief, was the sheer coincidence that we all lost someone that day. It was difficult. But now, with time, I've come to realize that it is important for us to maintain our memories and share them with our communities, because that's the way that the positive lessons, the benefits, the sort of togetherness that Greg referenced, the coming together of humanity that gets lost as things fade to history, can be preserved. So I hope we will reflect on where we were, but also what we did to bring our communities together after that horrible event. Because there was a brief, shining period where we really did unite and come together and care about each other and look out for each other. And that's the memory that I take away and hope to pass down to my children, who will have no memory. They will only have history. And so, you know, no day will erase you from the memory of time. I've come to accept it. And I hope to be able to pass on, as you are, your memories to your families and to the next generation. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce Peter Moyer, firefighter here in Brookline, very active in the community and many charitable and other activities, and the brother of Manuel del Valle Jr., one of the firefighters who perished on 9/11, rushing into the buildings as they were on fire, trying to save people. And it's moving to even think about what they did. But Peter?
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I've been working for this fire department for 10 years, and I've been in Brookline since August 20th, 1984. I eat dinners at firehouses just like this. The dinner table here seats 8 people. A lot of these dinner conversations revolve around many topics, but often people tell me or advise me what to say on this day. And I'm appreciative to be known as someone that speaks up for others and brings others with him. There are members of this fire department currently that went to high school with Manny. Those members are Mike Kelleher, Danny Differ, Glenn Vitorino, Chris Wagner, Dickie Radford, Glenn Vitorino is known to many by Vito. He's here today, working today, in service today on Ladder 1. So there are members that went to high school with Manny that are still working today in this town currently. Along with firemen, I get to talk to people from the upper echelon in these emergency safety agencies. I talked to Chief of Operations Randolph just this week in regards to today. I talked to the Chief of Police, Jen Canny Pastor, in regards to today. Now, these two people that I've talked to have a great grip and a balanced perspective for the people that work alongside them and under them. During the conversation with Jen Pastor, I asked her what she looks for in a police officer. And she looks for somebody that goes that extra mile. And she told me a couple people's names in regards to what they do in their life and their inner workings of their life, and I would like to mention those people. First is Al Gusty. Him, alongside with Joe Amendola, work nights so they can coach children in the daytime. They sleep deprive themselves throughout their life so they can affect others, the youth. Next is Keith Lacey, who the chief admires, does a lot of charitable work through St. Mary's Church. And then John Jennings, who I know well, who recently became a detective. The Jennings family is a force. Eileen Jennings, Kim Jennings, great people to know. Solid individuals. There are two other members that got on in 2014 when I did. It's Will Walker and Brian Gallagher. These guys have a great spirit. They get out of their car, they're ready to go. Fully prepared. I feel confident alongside of them. The medics in this town share the firehouses with us. In other towns, they may go to a different station. In Brookline, they're at Station 4 and Station 7, so we eat with the medics. We park the cars alongside with the medics, and we work with the medics. There are two medics. They're a team here by the name of Brian Gilman and Pat Cummins. They got 45 years combined. They've been rolling strong as a team for 7 years straight. They should be commended. I'm happy to speak their name. The two shift commanders in Brookline are Kevin Robichaud, a charitable community man and a family man who has combat veteran time. And we have a new shift commander as well. Danny Ruiz, who I spoke to yesterday. He says he has 6 kids. He says he's nothing without his kids. He says he works for his kids. He says he's in a unit with his kids. I'm proud to work alongside of these individuals. This year, I got to coach Brookline varsity baseball. Something my family really wanted me to do. Something my brother wants me to do. We had an outstanding year. We had a winning year. We hosted a regional and we won a playoff game. We got a new brand of baseball in town. On April 24th, against Newton North, a pitcher by the name of Nico Hart threw a no-hitter. And I didn't realize how much I loved that game of baseball until that day. I've been working with that kid since February, throwing bullpens. He threw 118 pitches, 9 strikeouts. He gave us our 9th win on the way to a winning season. He won our Cy Young Award. And after that game, we stayed on the field, and the coaches hugged it out. Coach Ed Clancy, Coach Colin King, myself, Coach O'Connor. We all have full-time jobs, but we know the power of dedication towards another person, a younger person, an athlete that represents the town, that wears Brookline on their jersey. This year, this past winter, the town of Brookline, along with some of the chiefs, asked if I wanted to put the star on the Christmas tree. I didn't quite know what the magnitude of that honor was until it was done. One day I showed up to work. I asked this man right to my right, AJ, next week, I'm doing the training. We're doing community service. We're going to Town Hall, 350 Washington Street. We went there with Dan Crowley, Ethan Hendrickson Smith, AJ, and myself. Steve Weinstein was at the front desk. We dressed the Christmas tree. We put the angel on the top. When people came and walked by, they walked out the door, did a U-turn, and came back and were taking pictures with us. It meant a lot to people. That carried a little momentum. The house captain wondered if I wanted to get some people to put the star on the Christmas tree at Station 1 next. We got Tommy Bottolo's son, Felice, who goes to Pierce. Him and Neil, Vietnam veteran, came right up, put the star on the tree. I didn't know how much value that was to me until I did it. It's one of the most honorable things I've done with my life. Just put the star on the tree in the town I work for. Last night, right around midnight, I couldn't sleep. I was waiting for my brother's voice. It's a common phenomenon to have a voice of a loved one in your head, and you can hear the intonality of that voice. Around midnight, I asked my brother what he wanted from me. And in order, he said, number one, take care of your family. Look after your parents. Number two, become the best firefighter you can. Number three, proceed in honor. And number four, do you remember those times we went out to play baseball? Remember twice a week I used to come so we can go to Robinson Field to take batting practice? Remember those glorious times where you admired coaches like Arlen Shostak and Barbara Ward? Why don't you go do that, Pete? Do that with yourself. Look after some kids. Don't leave any kids behind. And then relax. Be at peace. Live your life. Enjoy your community. So I still listen to my brother's words. I really appreciate your time. It's been 20 plus years. And my brother's name still gets brought up at the dinner table. Some people pass on, and in 30 days after that billing cycle, not many people mention their name. It's a challenging life. Please stick together the best you can and proceed with honor. Thank you.
Before I ask Tracy Clark, oops. It's on? Okay. Before I ask Tracy Clark to give us a couple more songs, I'd like to just remind people of the times on September 11th, 2001, when the various things happened that changed America. It was 8:46 that the first plane hit World Trade Center. That was Flight 11 coming out of Boston. It hit the North Tower of the World Trade Center. 9:03, United Flight 175, also out of Boston, crashed into the South Tower. And 9:37, American Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon. 10:03, Flight 93 crashed into a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. It is believed that that plane was intended to be used to crash into the Capitol or the White House, but the passengers very bravely resisted and caused it to not carry out its terrorist act, and instead crashed in Pennsylvania. You know, it's good to remember those times on a day like today, a beautiful day that nonetheless was so tragic and so impactful for America, for the good and for the bad. After Tracy's songs, I'd like to ask anyone in the audience who would like to come up and give their own reflections on September 11th, what they felt at the time, what they've learned from that. Just a couple people before the remembrance ceremony that the firefighters will put on beginning at 10 o'clock. So after Tracy sings, anyone who'd like to do that, please come up and talk in the mic. Thank you. Tracy?
Honor guard, attention. Present arms.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. God of a weary years, God of a silent tears, Thou who hast brought us this far on our way, Thou who hast by thy might led us into the light. Let us go on in the path we pray. Sing a song full of the faith that the darkness has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on as one. Let us march on till victory as one.
Thank you, Tracy. Now, is anyone interested in doing what I suggested? Lady right back here, come on
All right,
up.
order arms. At ease.
You know, I'm not sure everyone really enjoys listening to me and the other esteemed speakers on our program. So it's always good to have someone who's just a regular person.
Just a regular person.
Give their thoughts.
So I'm a Brookline resident. My name is Martha Huntley, and I live in Brookline Village. And so my name is Martha Huntley, and I live in Brookline Village. And my story is of gratitude. On that unbelievably tragic day, my twin boys were just 4, and my daughter was 1. And they were just, beautifully in their innocence. When it all happened, I didn't want to have the TV on, or, I didn't want them to witness any of the fright. And we are so blessed in Brookline to have parks everywhere you turn. And so often all over Brookline, people were coming out of their houses and they were meeting in the parks underneath these, incredibly quiet skies because, there were no flights. And people were walking home from Boston because they weren't taking the train. There was so much uncertainty about what else could happen. And people were walking home from Boston and elsewhere and converging in Emerson Park and sharing bits of pieces of stories that they had heard. And just, people trying to make sense of it and just being able to be together and share all of those, whatever all of those feelings were. So that's really just, I think, one of the things that I most remember, being here and being able to so easily be with my community. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate those remembrances of how that day actually occurred here in Brookline. Anyone else like to anything? Okay.
Hello, my name is Bobby Liu. I'm a lifelong Brookline resident, graduated Brookline High School in 1989, and I just wanted to share a story about my interactions with Manny. After school, we'd play basketball, and I wasn't this tall back in high school. So after school, he just treated everybody with kindness, and I will always remember that about him. I too have 2 boys, and I coached baseball, and yeah, thank you for coaching, Pete. You did a great job. Yeah, that's all I have to say. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else? We have a few minutes before the firefighters' ceremony begins. Sure, Mike. And shortly, a few minutes before 10, I'm going to ask Chief of Operations David Randolph to begin the ceremony that they and other firefighters across the Commonwealth have on this day. Mike.
Thank you. My name is Mike Sandman, and I'm a Red Sox fan. And about 25 years ago, I was sitting in right field, surrounded by a bunch of people who were rooting for the Yankees. The Red Sox were playing the Evil Empire. And it turned out that they were firefighters from the fire company at the World Trade Center. And they had an annual trip to Boston because at some point they had had an interaction with Brookline firefighters and had set up this regular exchange of baseball patriotism. And I know that 2 years later, some of those people didn't make it out of the World Trade Center. There is a linkage between Brookline and that fire company and the Brookline Fire Department and those firefighters that I think is something we all need to remember and be thankful for.
Thank you, Mike. That's quite an important connection and remembrance. Appreciate it. Anyone else so brave as to come up and talk in the mic? Okay. Chief of Operations, David Randolph, I turn the program over to you.
Thank you, Bernard.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Good morning, David Randolph. I'm the Chief of Operations for the Fire Department. Excuse me. Every September 11th at 10 a.m., the Fire Department performs a ceremony issued and started by the Department of Fire Services. So at 10 a.m., we will start those protocols in the ceremony. But before that begins, I'd just like to thank the community and for everybody turning out today. It really means a lot. September 11th has a lot of significance to the fire service, but as we heard from the citizens who spoke, and thank you very much, I enjoyed hearing you, it means something to everybody. I can remember every minute of that day, and it's a memory that will never leave. You know, my kids laugh at me because sometimes I can't remember a hockey game that they played over the weekend and half the things that my wife tells me, but September 11th stays with me. But one of the most significant things that has stayed with me all these years is the way that everybody came together. And I always like to think about Brookline and always say that the community has always supported the fire department and emergency management and the police. Brookline is truly a wonderful place to grow up. It's a wonderful place to work and raise a family and make new friends. So as I've said in years past, just continue to be the community that you are. It really means a lot to those of us who work here and growing up and making new friends. So it's very much appreciated. So at this time, I would really like to thank the Brookline Fire Department Honor Guard and everyone else that participated, the troop, and for Mr. Green for continually putting this together and taking a hand and partnership with the fire department to make sure that 9/11 lives on in our memories and the community continues to come together. So thank you all very much. The fire department really appreciates it. Thank you.
Okay.
You want to read the prayer now?
Yeah, we can we'll start with a prayer and then we'll end it.
All right, so at this moment, Lieutenant Differ is going to read the fireman's prayer.
Honor guard, attention! Present arms!
Firefighter's prayer. When I'm called to duty, wherever flames may rage, give me the strength and save a life, whatever be the age. Help me embrace a little child before it's too late. Save an older person from the horror of that fate. Enable me to be alert and hear the weakest shout
and quickly and efficiently put the fire out. I want to fill my calling and give the best in me to guard every neighbor and protect this property. And according to God's will, I must answer death's call. Bless your protecting hand, my family, one and all. Amen. So we can get right into the bill. At this time, we'd like to lower the flag to half-staff in remembrance.
If you could all join us for a moment of silence.
Another prayer. Oh God, we remember before you this day our brothers and sisters lost on September 11, 2001. We thank you for their example of courage and sacrifice. In your boundless compassion, console their families, friends, co-workers, and all who mourn their deaths. Give us faith to see the death. Give us faith to see in death the gate of eternal life, so that in quiet confidence we may continue our journey and serve with honor, dignity, courage. Amen. At this time, we'll raise the flag.
Once again, on behalf of the Brookline Fire Department, thank you for this wonderful turnout, and we really appreciate it. Have a great day. Thanks.
Honor guard, order, arms. Honor guard, at ease.
Well, that concludes our program this morning. As you go home, please reflect or use the time to reflect on your thoughts about 9/11 and reflect on the heroism and bravery of our firefighters, our police, our all of our first responders, including, I'd like to add, and this is not really intended to be a joke, but it's important, the dogs, the rescue dogs, who played such an important role at 9/11, which you can learn about at the 9/11 Museum. But at any rate, also reflect on your own capacity for heroism, for bravery, because we all have that. It's just a question of being willing to step up and support your fellow human being in a time of crisis, whether that's listening to them, as Representative Vitola suggested, or whether it's going into a house and helping children who may be in danger of a fire or whatever. We all have that capacity, and we should find ways to tap into it, like our firefighters and others do on a regular daily basis. Thank you for coming out today, and have a good day on this beautiful September day. It's kind of painful to think that it was a day like this that 9/11 occurred on, but that's it. Thank you.
I got dismissed.